When NASA scientists challenged Elon Musk to take their impossible brain test, they thought they were just testing his intelligence. The public believed it was a battle of smarts between a famous inventor and top space scientists. But when Elon scored an impossible 99.8 out of 100, everyone was stunned. What nobody knew was that this test wasn't really about who was smarter. It was about something much more important. Something that could change how humans explore space forever. And Dr. Melody Chen, who created the test, had a secret reason for challenging Elon, one that involved her astronaut father and a dangerous truth about space travel that almost nobody knew. Dr. Melody Chen paced back and forth in NASA's Brain Science Division meeting room. Her steps were quick and nervous on the polished floor. The room wasn't fancy like people might expect. Just white walls covered with equations, star charts and brain diagrams. A long table sat in the middle with 7 empty chairs, and one that held Dr. Felix Rodriguez. Melody stopped pacing and looked at Felix. "Are we really going to do this?" Felix nodded, his serious face showing both excitement and worry. "We need the best minds working on the Mars problem, and he claims to be the smartest." Melody pushed a strand of black hair behind her ear and sighed. For 3 weeks, Elon Musk had been all over the news. Again this time, he said his brain was optimized for space travel decisions, and that NASA's scientists are thinking too small. The comments had made headlines everywhere. "He doesn't know about the radiation issue," Melody said quietly. "No one outside this division does feel." Reminded her that's the point, we need to see how his brain works, without telling him what we're really looking for. Melody walked to the window. From here, she could see the testing lab where her team had spent 5 years developing the advanced cognitive assessment. It was the toughest brain test ever made. Some called it impossible. No one had ever scored above 85 out of 100 on it. Dr. Wilson scored 83 last month, and she's a literal genius. Melody said. Felix stood up and joined her at the window. "That's why this will work if Musk scores high enough. We'll know his brain might have the patterns we need." Melody thought about her father, about how his mind had changed after coming back from space, how the radiation had slowly taken him away piece by piece. No one had connected the dots then, but now they knew better. Deep space radiation affected human brains in ways they were only beginning to understand. "Send the invitation," she finally said, "but make it public. He won't be able to say no if everyone is watching." Felix smiled. "I already wrote it. Just need your approval to post it." He handed her his tablet. The message was simple but would create a media storm. NASA Brain Science Division challenges Elon Musk to take the advanced cognitive assessment. Will he accept? Melody took a deep breath and pressed the approved button. This could backfire badly, or it could save the Mars mission. Felix countered, and maybe many astronaut lives within an hour. The challenge was posted on all major social media platforms. News channels picked it up immediately. Brain battle and fight under Musk. NASA started trending worldwide. Dr. Zara Okafor, the youngest member of the Brain Science Division, rushed into the meeting room. Her bright yellow dress stood out against the white walls. "Have you seen the response rates? This is exploding online." "Any word from Musk?" Felix asked. Zara shook her head. "Not yet, but the public pressure is building. People are placing bets on whether he'll take the test and what his score will be." Melody checked her watch. "He'll respond within the hour. His ego won't let this sit long." She was wrong. Elon's response came just 8 minutes later. Short and confident. "Test approved. I'll take it live. Prepare to be amazed." Tuesday, 900 a.m. The world went even more crazy. News channels talked about nothing else. Would the famous inventor beat NASA's impossible test, or would he finally fail at something? Melody watched the coverage with mixed feelings. The public thought this was about proving who was smarter. One man against an entire NASA division. They had no idea what was really at stake. Later that evening, Melody sat alone in her office reviewing brain scan data from former astronauts. Each scan showed the same pattern of damage, like tiny storms in certain brain regions. Her phone buzzed with a text from Felix. The director wants to meet. Now NASA's director, Dr. Harold Phillips, was not happy. His face was red as Melody entered his office. "What were you thinking?" he demanded, challenging a private citizen to a public intelligence test. "This makes us look petty and insecure, sir. If I could explain." "Please do," he said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. For the next 20 minutes, Melody laid out what her team had discovered: how deep space radiation created unusual damage patterns in astronaut brains, how certain brain types seemed more resistant than others, how the Mars mission would expose astronauts to this rad-A for years, not just months. "We need to identify which brain patterns offer natural protection." She explained the advanced cognitive assessment doesn't just test intelligence, it maps how a brain solves problems. Dr. Phillips's anger slowly turned to concern. "And you think Musk might have one of these resistant brain patterns based on what he's accomplished?" "It's possible. We need data from exceptional brains, and he just volunteered to be tested." The director was quiet for a long moment. "Why not just tell him the truth? Ask him to participate in the study because we need genuine responses." Melody explained, "If he knows what we're looking for, it could change how he approaches the test. Plus, this protects the classified nature of our findings. This is a big risk." "Dr. Chen, space exploration has always been about taking risks." She replied, "My father took his risk, now it's my turn." The director nodded slowly. "All right, but I want daily updates and a full contingency plan. If this goes wrong." "Yes, sir." As Melody left the building that night, she looked up at the stars. Mars was visible as a small reddish dot, so close in the sky, yet so dangerously far for human travel. "We're coming," she whispered. "Just not the way everyone thinks." What nobody knew was that Dr. Chen had a secret reason for this challenge. Beyond even the radiation studies, something that went far beyond proving who was smarter, something she hadn't shared with Felix, or Zara, or even the director, something that could change everything. We know about the human brain. Zara Okafor was only 28 years old, but she had designed the hardest parts of the advanced cognitive assessment. Her small office at NASA was covered with colorful sticky notes and brain diagrams. 3 computer screens showed different parts of the test, glowing blue in the early morning light. Growing up in Lagos, Nigeria, Zara had been solving complex puzzles since she was 4 years old. Her mother, a mathematics professor, would bring home logic games instead of toys. By 12, Zara was creating her own puzzles that even adults found challenging. Now she sat in her NASA office, staring at her middle screen as messages poured in. Everyone wanted to know about the test that would challenge Elon Musk. "Is the test fair?" reporters kept asking in their emails. "Will it be biased against Musk? Can regular people try it too?" Zara rubbed her tired eyes. She had been up since 5 a.m., making final adjustments to the test. The truth was, she had designed it to be impossible to score 100 on. It wasn't meant to create a perfect score. It was meant to show where a person's brain needed improvement. Even Einstein would score around 90, she muttered to herself. Her phone buzzed a text from Felix. "Have you seen the news? Musk just posted that he's ready to show NASA how limitless thinking works." Zara rolled her eyes. The man certainly didn't lack confidence. There was a knock at her door, and her assistant Marcus poked his head in. "Dr. Chen wants to see you right away." Did she say? Why, Marcus shook his head. "But the director is with her, and some people I don't recognize." That was unusual. Zara saved her work and headed down the hallway to Melody's office, wondering what could be so urgent in Melody's office. Zara found not just Dr. Chen but also the NASA director and 3 government officials in dark suits. They looked serious, which made Zara nervous. "Please close the door," Melody said when Zara entered the room. Felt tense. No one was sitting. One of the suited men was standing by the window, looking out with his hands clasped behind his back. "We need to talk about Tuesday." Melody said, her face serious. There's more writing on this test than you know. Zara glanced at the others more than the radiation study. The suited man at the window turned around. He had gray hair and sharp eyes that seemed to notice everything. My name is Director Harmon. I'm with a division of DARPA that focuses on human enhancement. Zara had heard of DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. They worked on cutting-edge technologies, often for military applications. OCA 4, Director Harmon continued. What we're about to tell you is classified. It concerns national security and the future of human space travel. Zara's heart raced. What had she gotten herself into? For the next 20 minutes, they explained things that made Zara's scientific mind spin. Deep space. Radiation affected human brains in ways they were only beginning to understand. But the effects weren't all negative. In some cases, Melody explained, showing brain scans on her tablet, the radiation exposure actually enhanced certain neural pathways, made them more efficient. Like an upgrade. Zara asked. More like an evolution, Director Harmon said. But it's unpredictable. Most astronauts experience negative effects. Memory loss, cognitive decline. But a small percentage show these enhanced pathways. We've been testing astronaut candidates secretly, Melody added. But we need more data from exceptional brains. So this isn't just about challenging Musk's ego. Zara asked. That's just the cover story. The NASA director said what we're really measuring is whether his brain structure might respond positively to deep space radiation, if it would enhance rather than damage. Zara sat down, trying to process all this information. So you're saying some humans might be neurologically suited for deep space travel, like naturally protected? Exactly. Director Harmon nodded. And potentially enhanced by it. But there's more, Melody said hesitantly. She looked at the government officials, who nodded for her to continue. We have reason to believe Musk already knows about this phenomenon. What? Zara was shocked. How could he know this is classified? His Neuralink technology. One of the other suited men spoke up. It maps brain function in ways similar to our studies. We think he's identified the same patterns we have, but doesn't know they're connected to space radiation. So he's coming to take this test, Zara began, because he wants to confirm his theories. Melody finished. And we want to confirm ours. Zara thought about the test she had designed. It hadn't been created to identify radiation-resistant brains specifically, but it did map problem-solving pathways in great detail. Should I modify the test before Tuesday? She asked. No, Director. Harmon said firmly. Any changes now would raise suspicions. Your original design maps exactly what we need to see. As the meeting ended, Zara felt the weight of this new information. She had thought she was designing a test to measure general intelligence. Now it seemed she was part of something much bigger, something that could change human evolution itself. Back in her office, Zara opened the test program again and looked at it with new eyes. Section 4. The quantum relationship mapping portion might actually show the neural patterns they were looking for. She had created that section based on pure theoretical neuroscience, never imagining it might identify by humans suited for space evolution. As she worked through the afternoon, a new message alert popped up on her screen. It was from an unfamiliar email address, but the subject line made her freeze. About Tuesday's neural pathway test. The email contained just one line. I know what you're really looking for. Isara stared at the screen. Her heart pounding. Was this really from Elon Musk? And if it was, how much did he actually know? She immediately called Melody, who rushed to her office. They both stared at the short message. Should we cancel the test? Zara asked. Melody thought for a long moment. No, if anything. This makes it more important. We need to know exactly what he knows, and what his brain can do. Zara added. Softly, neither of them said what they were both thinking, that Tuesday's test might reveal not just the future of space travel, but the next step in human brain evolution. As Zara left NASA that evening, the sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and pink. She thought about human history. how we had evolved from caves to space stations. Now we might be on the verge of the next great leap. What she didn't realize was that Elon Musk might have already taken that leap the day before the test. Elon Musk was not doing what everyone expected. He wasn't studying or practicing brain games. He wasn't reviewing sample questions or meeting with coaches. Instead, he was sitting cross-legged on the bamboo floor. Of his meditation room, his eyes were closed, his back straight, his hands resting on his knees. The room was silent except for his slow, steady breathing. His assistant, Marco Diaz, stood in the doorway, shifting uncomfortably. He had been working for Elon for 3 years. But he still wasn't used to these quiet moments Marco preferred, when his boss was charging through the SpaceX factory, shouting ideas and making split-second decisions. Sir Marco finally said, breaking the silence, "The car is ready whenever you want to review the test." "Materials." Elon opened one eye. "I'm not reviewing anything." Marco blinked in surprise, "But Sir, NASA has released sample questions your team has prepared a summary of. Likely test areas not interested." Elon said, closing his eye again. "The mind works best when it's calm and open." Marco waited another moment, then nodded and left. As he walked down the hallway, he checked his phone. Social media was exploding with predictions about tomorrow's test. Most people thought Elon would score in the high 80s. A few loyal fans predicted 90. Plus, nobody was predicting a perfect score, because everyone knew that was impossible. Across town, the NASA team was in chaos. Their testing center had experienced a power failure, and the backup generators weren't working properly. "This can't be happening." Melody groaned, watching the lights flicker in the main testing lab. "The whole world will be watching tomorrow." Felix was on the phone trying to find replacement parts for the backup power system. Zara was rechecking the test software to make sure it would work even with power. "Fluctuations. Maybe we should postpone," suggested a technician named Raj. "Blame it on the power issue." "Absolutely not." Melody said firmly. He would say, "We were afraid of his results. We go ahead as planned." Zara looked up from her laptop. "I've modified the program to save progress every 3 seconds. Even if we lose power completely, we'll only lose a few seconds of data." Melody nodded gratefully. "Any word from the power company?" "They'll have it fixed by midnight," Felix reported, hanging up his phone, "but they can't guarantee it will." "Stay fixed, it'll have to do," Melody said as the team worked to prepare the testing room. Zara kept thinking about the strange email she had received. "I know what you're really looking for." She hadn't told anyone except Melody about it. What if it was a hoax? What if someone was trying to scare them? But what if Elon Musk really did know about the brain changes caused by space radiation? What if he had found a way to induce those changes without actually going to space? As evening fell, Melody took a rare moment alone on the NASA building's roof. The stars were bright overhead, with Mars glowing red among them. She thought about her father, who had been one of the first black astronauts. He had been so sharp, so quick with jokes and stories. Until he wasn't. The doctors had called it early-onset dementia, but Melody had discovered the truth in his brain scans years later. It was radiation damage, concentrated in his memory and emotional centers. "I'm going to figure it out, Dad," she whispered to the stars. "I promise." Meanwhile, Elon had moved from meditation to his private lab. Few people knew about this small windowless room in his house. Not even Marco was allowed inside. He entered a code on a keypad, and the door slid open silently inside. Blue lights illuminated a space that looked more like a medical facility than a tech lab. In the center was a reclining chair with a complex device positioned above it. Something like a beauty salon hairdryer, but much more high-tech. Elon sat in the chair and pressed a button. The device lowered over his head, not quite touching but hovering just inches away. Next he opened a small case on the side table and removed a vial of clear liquid using a dropper. He carefully placed 1 drop in each eye. They didn't sting like regular eye drops. Instead, they created a pleasant, warming sensation. Was this his secret advantage for tomorrow's test, or something entirely different? After 10 minutes, the device above his head beeped softly. Elon pressed another button, and it raised back to its original position. He stood, blinked several times, and checked his reflection in a small mirror on the wall. His pupils were slightly larger than normal, with a faint blue ring around the edges. It would fade by morning, but the effects would remain. Neural pathway enhancement complete, announced a soft computer voice. Thank you, Arya. Elon replied, please prepare the contact lenses for tomorrow. Preparing neural interface contacts. The voice confirmed, would you like to review your baseline scores? No need, Elon said with a small smile. Tomorrow isn't about scores. It's about proving what human brains are capable of. As he left the lab, Elon felt a familiar tingling sensation at the base of his skull. It always happened after these sessions. His doctors couldn't explain it. But he had a theory. It was the feeling of his brain making new connections, evolving in ways that human brains weren't supposed to evolve. At least not yet. In her apartment, Zara couldn't sleep. She kept reviewing the test in her mind, wondering if she had missed something important. The quantum relationship ship mapping section was designed to be unsolvable at perfect levels. No human brain should be able to process that many relationships simultaneously. But what if some human brains could? What if Elon's brain was already different? As she finally drifted off to sleep, one question followed her into her dreams. What would happen if he scored 100? Camera crews started setting up at 5 a.m. outside NASA headquarters by 6 a.m. Coffee trucks had arrived to serve the growing crowd by 8 a.m. The crowd stretched for 6 blocks, with people holding homemade signs reading Team Elon. And NASA knows best. Police had set up barriers to keep the sidewalks clear. News helicopters circled overhead. It felt more like a championship sports game than a cognitive test. Inside NASA headquarters, Melody arrived at 6:30 a.m. to find Felix already there. Checking the testing room for the 5th time. Power's been stable all night, he reported. But I've got 4 technicians standing by just in case. Melody nodded. Too nervous to speak. She had barely slept all night. Her dreams had been filled with numbers and brain scans and her father's confused face. In his final months, Zara arrived at 7 a.m., carrying a small cooler. What's that? That Felix asked. Iced coffee and donuts. She replied, brain food. Despite their nervousness, they all smiled. Food was Zara's answer to stress. As they ate, Melody went over the day's schedule. One more time. Musk arrives at 9:00 a.m. We do a brief welcome and explanation of the test format. Testing begins at 9:30 and should last approximately 3 hours. Results processing takes another 30 minutes. Press conference at 2 p.m. The world press is already calling this the Battle of the Brains. Felix said, checking his phone, this is getting more attention than the last Mars rover landing. People love competition. Zara said, especially when it involves someone like Musk. At 8:45 a.m. a black Tesla pulled up to the entrance. The crowd roared as Elon stepped out wearing jeans and a simple black t-shirt. Security guards created a path through the crowd. Elon waved briefly, his face calm but confident, watching on the security monitors. Melody took a deep breath here. We go in the preparation room. Melody greeted him formally. Mr. Musk, thank you for accepting our challenge. Thank you for offering it. He replied with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. I'm always interested in good data about brain function. There was something in the way he said it that made Melody pause. Did he know more about their real purpose than he should? Felix gave a brief explanation of the test format. The Advanced Cognitive Assessment has 5 sections. Each progressively more difficult. You'll have 40 minutes. Per section, the system will guide you through each part. Elon nodded, and the monitoring equipment, he was referring to the sensors that would be attached to his forehead and temples. Zara stepped forward. Standard EEG sensors. She explained they measure brain activity patterns during the test. We use them for all participants. Of course, Elon said. Still with that small knowing smile, the test room was simple. One comfortable chair, one advanced computer with a large screen and sensors that would monitor everything from eye movements to tiny changes in facial blood flow. Cameras would record the entire session, broadcasting live to millions of viewers around the world. As Elon took his seat, a technician attached the sensors. Melody noticed him blink several times as if adjusting something in his eyes. She remembered how he had touched his eyes during their video call. Was he wearing contact lenses? "Are you ready to begin, Mr. Musk?" Felix asked. "I've been ready for years," Elon replied cryptically. Felix gave Melody a questioning look, but she just nodded for him to proceed. The test will begin in 3, 2, 1, start, as Elon began the first section. Melody, Felix, and Zara moved to the observation room next door. Here they could watch both Elon and the real-time data from the brain sensors, heart rate steady at 65 beats per minute. Zara noted remarkably calm on screens around the world. Millions of people watched as Elon tackled the first problems. They couldn't see the actual questions, only Elon's face as he worked through them. A progress bar at the bottom of the screen showed his advancement through each section. One tested pattern recognition. Elon moved through it quickly, his fingers tapping answers almost before the questions fully appeared on the screen. "He's on pace for a perfect score in this section," Felix whispered to Melody as they watched from the observation room. Zara was focused on the brain activity patterns. "Frontal lobe activity is unusually organized," she said. "I've never seen patterns." This symmetrical section, too, focused on spatial reasoning and 4D visualization. This was where most people started to struggle, but Elon maintained his rapid pace, occasionally smiling slightly as if enjoying a private joke. "Something's not right," Zara said, studying her tablet. "These response patterns, they're too perfect." "What do you mean?" Melody asked, looking over her shoulder at the DAT. "I mean, normal human response shows variation, hesitation on harder questions, bursts of speed on easier ones. He's moving at exactly the same pace. Regardless of difficulty, could he have practiced similar questions?" Felix asked. Zara shook her head. "Not possible, many of these problems are generated by AI in real time. They've never existed before today." In the test room, Elon reached Section 3. Adaptive problem solving. The computer presented a problem, then changed the rules based on his answers. This section was designed to measure how quickly a brain could adapt to new information. For the first time, he slowed down, his brow furrowed. The biosensors showed his heart rate increasing slightly. "Now we'll see," Zara murmured, but after a brief pause, Elon began answering again. Not just correctly, but with solutions the system identified as novel approaches. He was finding answers that the test designers hadn't even considered. By the time Section 4 began, quantum relationship mapping, the NASA team was in stunned silence. No one had ever made it this far with such a high score. The live broadcast commentator were going wild. "We're witnessing history. Is the human brain capable of more than we thought? Or is Elon Musk simply not like the rest of us?" Inside the observation room, Zara was frantically checking her systems. "This isn't possible." She kept saying the quantum section was designed to be unsolvable at perfect levels, yet the scores kept rising: 90, 92, 95. As Section 5 began, the synthetic creativity and adaptive consciousness module, even Elon looked surprised by his performance for a moment. He paused and glanced toward the one-way glass separating him from the observation room. That's when Melody noticed something odd. A tiny reflection in Elon's eye. A blue flash that shouldn't be there. Was it possible? Could he be wearing some kind of advanced contact lens? Before she could point it out to the others, every light in the building flickered. The backup generators hummed loudly, then fell silent, and everything went dark. Emergency lights came on a few seconds after the power failed, casting an eerie red glow throughout NASA headquarters. In the testing room, Elon sat perfectly still, hands folded in his lap. He didn't look surprised or worried, just patient in the observation room. Felix was already on the phone. "What do you mean the whole grid is down?" he shouted. "This is NASA. We have priority power." Access Zara was checking her tablet, which ran on battery power. "The test data is safe." She reported everything up to the moment of the blackout was saved to our secure servers. Melody wasn't listening to either of them. She was staring through the one-way glass at Elon, in the red emergency lighting. His eyes seemed to glow slightly. Was it just a reflection, or something more? "I'm going in there," she decided suddenly. "What? Why?" Felix asked, covering the phone's microphone. "Someone needs to explain what's happening, and I want to see something up close before neither of her colleagues could object." Melody was out the door. She took a deep breath, then entered the testing room. "Mr. Musk," she said quietly, "I apologize for the interruption. We've had a major power failure." Elon tilted his head. "Interesting timing." He said, his voice was calm, almost amused. "The whole neighborhood grid is down." Melody explained. "Our generators should come online soon." "I'm not concerned." He replied. "Time gives us a chance to chat." Melody pulled up a chair and sat across from him up close. His eyes looked normal. No strange glow. No visible technology had she imagined it. "While we're waiting," she said carefully, "I have a question. I assume it's about how I'm doing so well." Elon said with a small smile. "Actually, it's about why you agreed to this test in the first place." The real reason, for a moment, his confident expression faltered. Something vulnerable and human flashed across his face. "The same reason you created it, Dr. Chen, to understand what the human brain is truly capable of." Before Melody could respond, the main lights flickered back on a technician knocked on the door. "Power's back, Dr. Chen, systems rebooting. We'll continue this conversation another time," Elon said, turning back to the computer screen. Melody reluctantly left the room, her mind racing. What had that moment of vulnerability meant, and how did he know her personal motivation for the test back in the observation room? Zara was staring at her data screen with a confused expression. "What's wrong?" Melody asked. "Look at this." Zara pointed to brainwave patterns on her screen. "This is Musk's neural activity during the test." She swiped to a new screen. "And this is his activity during the blackout. When you were talking to him, the patterns were completely different during the test. His brainwaves had been unnaturally regular, almost like a perfect sine wave, but during the blackout they showed the normal variation of a human brain under mild stress. He's using something," Zara whispered, "some kind of enhancement." "Can we prove it?" Felix asked. "Not." Without stopping the test and examining him directly, Zara replied, "Which we can't do in front of the whole world without evidence." Felix concluded. Melody thought about the flash of blue she had seen in Elon's eyes. "Continue monitoring record. Everything we'll need to analyze this later on." Screens around the world, viewers saw the test resume. A message scrolled across the bottom, explaining the brief delay due to a power outage within moments. Elon was back to solving problems at his remarkable pace. Section 5, the Synthetic Creativity and Adaptive Consciousness module, was the most challenging part of the test. It required not just solving problems but creating new patterns and relationships. Most test takers never got this far. Those who did usually scored below 70% on this section. But Elon moved through it with the same uncanny efficiency he had shown throughout. Only the slightest tightening around his eyes suggested he was working hard in the observation room. The team watched in silence as his score climbed higher to 95-97. "This is impossible." Zara said, "No human brain can process information this way unless it's being helped," Felix suggested. As the final questions appeared, even Elon seemed surprised by his performance. For a brief moment he glanced at his own hands as if not quite believing what they were doing. The test ended with a simple chime. The screen displayed a message assessment, complete processing results. The room fell silent. Elon sat back in his chair and closed his eyes. Taking deep breaths, for the first time he looked tired outside. The crowd had grown even larger during the test. News helicopters circled the building. Social media was exploding with speculation about how well Elon had done inside the processing room. A separate team of NASA scientists was reviewing the raw data. After 20 minutes, they sent their verification to Melody's tablet. She stared at the number in disbelief. 99.8 out of 100, the highest score in history by a massive margin. Felix looked over her shoulder and gasped. "That's not possible." Zara was already running calculations on her tablet, even if he got every answer right. The quantum relationship section is designed to max out at 98. The algorithms literally can't award a higher score, unless Melody began. Unless he found solutions the algorithms didn't expect. Felix finished her thought solutions that forced the system to rewrite its own scoring parameters. The implications were staggering. Either Elon Musk was using some kind of technological enhancement, or his brain truly was operating at a level they had never seen before. When Melody, Felix, and Zara entered the testing room, Elon was still sitting calmly. He looked up as they entered, his eyes clear and alert, despite the hours of intense concentration. "Congratulations, Mr. Musk," Melody said, formally aware of the cameras still broadcasting. "You've achieved a score of 90 min-date on the Advanced Cognitive Assessment." The room erupted in a mixture of gasps, applause, and confused murmurs from the EI NASA staff present. Elon stood and took a small bow. "Thank you for the interesting challenge." His modesty seemed genuine, which only confused Melody. More, was this all an act, or did he truly not realize how unprecedented his performance was? As he turned to leave, Melody stepped forward. Something inside her wouldn't let this end. So simply not when they still didn't understand what had just happened. "Mr. Musk," she said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "before you go, there's one more test, one that wasn't announced. This was not part of the plan." Everyone looked confused, including Felix and Zara. "Dr. Chen." The NASA director whispered urgently, "What are you doing?" But Melody continued, her eyes locked with Elon's. "It's a simple test of human empathy and emotional intelligence. Would you be willing for the first time all day, Elon?" Musk looked genuinely uncertain. The testing room fell completely silent. Everyone stared at Melody, then at Elon, waiting for his response. The NASA director looked like he might faint. "An empathy test," Elon repeated slowly. He adjusted his collar slightly, the first nervous gesture he'd shown all day. "Yes," Melody said firmly. "No computers, no sensors, just a conversation." Felix stepped forward. "Dr. Chen, this isn't in the approved protocol." "I'd be happy to participate." Elon interrupted. His confident smile returned, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Though I'm curious about the timing of this additional assessment." Before Melody could respond, the lights flickered again. This time they didn't come back on. The emergency system kicked in immediately, bathing the room in red light once more again. Felix groaned, reaching for his phone. "This is ridiculous." "Oh," security officer rushed into the room. "Dr. Chen, we need to move everyone to the main conference room. The entire grid is unstable. We're evacuating non-essential personnel from the building." "What about the test results?" Zara asked, clutching her tablet. "All data is secure on our backup servers," the officer assured her as they moved through the hallways. Reporters and camera crews tried to follow, shouting questions. What was his score? Did he break the record? Was there any cheating? Security held them back, allowing only the core team and Elon to enter the large conference room. Unlike the rest of the building, this room had windows letting in natural light. Outside, dark clouds were gathering, explaining the power problems. A major storm was moving. "In the press conference will need to be delayed," the NASA director announced once everyone was settled. "We'll wait for the power to stabilize." This created an awkward pause. Elon sat calmly at the conference table, while NASA staff huddled in small groups, whispering theories about his impossible test score. Melody sat directly across from Elon. She couldn't shake the feeling that all of this, his performance, the power outages, even the storm, was somehow connected. While we're waiting, she said quietly. Perhaps we could have that conversation I mentioned on. Studied her face. This isn't really about empathy, is it, Dr. Chen? It's about understanding. She replied, I still don't know why you agreed to this test. Her directness seemed to surprise him for a moment. His calculated mask slipped again. Why did you create it? He countered, to protect astronauts. She said honestly, my father was James Chen. Elon finished one of the best astronauts NASA ever had. He flew 3 major missions before his early retirement and his death. 3 years later, Melody tried not to show her shock. Her father's condition had been kept relatively private. How did Elon know these details? His brain was damaged by space radiation. Elon continued, lowering his voice so others couldn't hear. A particular type that affects neural pathways in ways we're only beginning to understand. Melody whispered before he could answer. Felix appeared at Melody's side. Powers expected back in 20 minutes. He reported, the director wants us to prepare a statement about the test results. I'll be right there, Melody said, not taking her eyes off Elon as Felix walked away. Elon leaned forward. You're not the only one who lost someone to space. Dr. Chen, the difference is, I have the resources to do something about it. This wasn't at all what Melody had expected. Was he suggesting that his interest in the test was personal, not just scientific or competitive? Before she could ask more questions, Zara rushed over, her face pale. We need to talk, she whispered urgently to Melody, now in a quiet corner of the room. Zara showed Melody her tablet. I've been analyzing the test data more carefully. Look at these response patterns in the quantum relationship section. The screen showed a series of complex patterns. See how the answers build on each other. It's not just solving each problem correctly, it's creating a larger pattern across multiple problems. What does that mean? Melody asked. It means he wasn't just taking our test, Zara said, her voice shaking slightly. He was using it to build something. Build what? I don't know. But whatever it is, it required massive computational power. The kind that might cause power surges in the building's electrical system. Melody looked across the room at Elon, who was now calmly checking his phone. You think he caused the blackouts? I think whatever technology he's using did, Zara replied, maybe unintentionally. As they spoke, the main lights suddenly came back on. The NASA director clapped his hands for attention. Power stabilized sooner than expected. We'll proceed with the press conference in 30 minutes. Melody nodded, but her mind was racing. She needed more time, more answers as people began preparing for the press conference. Melody made a decision. She walked directly to the NASA director and whispered something in his ear. He frowned, then looked surprised, but finally nodded. Reluctantly, Melody returned to where Elon was sitting. Mr. Musk, she said formally, would you join me for a private conversation before the press conference? There's something I need to discuss with you regarding your test results. Elon smiled. Of course, Dr. Chen, I'm all ears. As they left the conference room together, Felix gave Melody a questioning look. She nodded, slightly letting him know she had a plan. She just wasn't entirely sure what it was. Yet what she did know was that announcing Elon's impossible score to the world before understanding how he achieved it would be a mistake. Especially if Zara was right. If he had somehow used NASA's own test for purposes they didn't yet understand. Melody led Elon to a small meeting room down the hall from the main conference area. The room was simple, just a round table with 6 chairs and a window overlooking the NASA campus. The gathering storm clouds made the afternoon sky dark and dramatic. No cameras, no sensors, no recording devices, just 2 people and whatever true truth might pass between them as they sat across from each other. Melody noticed that Elon looked different somehow, less perfect. There were faint shadows under his eyes that hadn't been visible before, and his posture was more relaxed. You're not interested in my cognitive scores, Elon said after a moment of silence. What is this really about? Melody took a deep breath. If she was going to get answers, she needed to offer some. Truth first, my father was an astronaut. She began after he returned from his last mission. His brain changed. He started forgetting things, having mood swings. 3 years later, he died from an aggressive form of brain deterioration that the doctors couldn't explain. I'm sorry to hear that, Elon said, his voice softer than his public persona. He seemed genuinely sympathetic, but you already knew, Melody observed. Elon nodded slightly. I've been studying the effects of space radiation on the human brain for 7 years now. Your father's case was significant because he was exposed to a particular type of radiation during the solar flare event on the station. Exactly, the shielding failed for only 9 minutes. But it was enough. Melody leaned forward. We found similar patterns in other returned astronauts, milder, but the same progression. It's the radiation exposure. It changes human brains. Not all human brains, Elon said carefully. Some are more resistant. Some even show positive adaptations. A chill ran through Melody. This was exactly what their classified research had shown. How did he know? And you think my work on brain-computer interfaces might help? Elon continued, as if reading her thoughts. I think you already know about this problem, Melody said, and I think that's why you agreed to this public spectacle, to draw attention to brain function and space travel. For a long moment, Elon was silent. Then he reached up to his eye and removed something, a contact lens. Then from the other eye, he placed them carefully on the table between them. They looked like normal contact lenses except for a faint blue ring around the edges. Neuralink prototype. He admitted, not available to the public. It enhances cognitive processing through direct neural feedback. You cheated, Melody said. But without anger, I demonstrated what's possible. He corrected her. The human brain can be enhanced, protected, and preserved even against space radiation. He reached into his pocket and placed a small drive on the table next to the contact lenses. This contains all our research on neural shielding. It's yours. Melody stared at the small drive. It looked so ordinary, yet it might contain the answers she'd been searching for all these years. Why give this to us? She asked, suspicious. Why not keep the competitive advantage for your own space program? Because NASA will send humans to Mars before I can, he said simply. And I don't want dead astronauts on anyone's conscience, even if it means sharing proprietary technology. Even then, he said firmly, some things are more important than patents and profits. Melody studied his face, looking for signs of deception. Instead, she saw something unexpected. Grief. Who did you lose? She asked quietly. Elon's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. My younger brother. He wasn't an astronaut, but he worked on the International Space Station as a contractor. Minor repairs during a solar minimum should have been safe, but it wasn't, Melody guessed. No, an unexpected radiation, first small but focused. His brain deterioration was similar to your father's, but faster. I didn't know, Melody said. It wasn't in any of our research. We kept it private. Elon explained, my family preferred it that way, but it's what drove my interest in neural protection. Technology. The pieces were finally coming together for Melody. Elon's strange confidence throughout the test, his willingness to participate in a public challenge that offered him no obvious benefit. It wasn't about ego or competition. It was about demonstrating a solution to a problem most people didn't even know existed. Those contact lenses, she said, pointing to them. They're not just cognitive enhancers. Are they? They're prototypes of what every Mars astronaut would need. He confirmed, neural interfaces that not only enhance function, but actively repair radiation damage as it occurs, and they worked well enough to score 99.8 on our impossible test. The test wasn't designed to be impossible, Elon said with a slight smile. It was designed to map brain function under complex conditions, exactly what we need to understand for long-duration space missions. Melody was startled by his precise knowledge of the test's true purpose. How did you know that? Because I would have designed it the same way. He replied, our research teams have been following parallel paths for years. We just had different resources and starting points. As they sat in silence for a moment, Melody realized something else. The power outages, they were related to your technology, weren't they? Elon looked slightly embarrassed. An unexpected side effect. The neural interfaces draw minimal power individually, but when pushed to maximum performance, they create a specific electromagnetic field. Your building's old wiring couldn't handle it, so it wasn't intentional. No, though it did give us a chance to talk, which might have been. Fortunate. As they stood to leave, Elon asked, what will you tell the press about my score? Melody considered this carefully. If she announced his true score, questions would be asked about how it was achieved that could force revelations about neural technology that neither NASA nor Neuralink might be ready to explain to the public. The truth, she finally decided, that human intelligence can't be captured in a simple number, that the test gave us valuable data that will help protect future astronauts, not about the contact lenses. Not yet, Melody said. Some truths need the right timing. Elon nodded in agreement. Science at the speed of public understanding. As they walked back toward the conference room, Melody felt lighter than she had in years. The data drive in her pocket might hold the key to protecting future astronauts from her father's fate. Sometimes answers came from unexpected places, even from a public challenge that it seemed like nothing more than a publicity stunt. The press conference was chaos. Reporters shouted questions from every direction, their voices overlapping in a jumble of curiosity and excitement. Camera flashes popped like lightning as Melody, Felix, and Zara took their places at the table on the small stage. Elon had chosen not to join them, preferring to watch from the side. Did Elon Musk really score 99.99? Does this prove he's the smartest person alive? What happened during the power outages? Melody raised her hands, asking for quiet. The room gradually settled down, all eyes focused on her. She had spent the last 15 minutes explaining everything to Felix and Zara. They had been shocked, then fascinated, and finally supportive of her decision about how to present the results. Thank you all for your patience. During today's technical difficulties, Melody began carefully. The advanced cognitive assessment has provided us with valuable data, and Mr. Musk performed. At exceptional levels, a reporter in the front row interrupted. Will you confirm his final score? Melody took a deep breath. This was the moment of truth, or at least the version of truth. The world was ready to hear. The advanced cognitive assessment was never designed to crown a winner or identify the smartest person, she explained. It was designed to map brain function under complex conditions. The room grew restless. This wasn't the dramatic conclusion they had been promised. Reporters exchanged confused glances. This story was supposed to be about a genius billionaire either proving his brilliance or failing spectacularly. Instead, it was turning into a scientific explanation. However, Melody continued, recapturing their attention. What we can share today is something more important. She nodded to Zara, who tapped on her tablet. The large screen behind them lit up, showing a series of brain scan images labeled with dates and subject numbers. These show the effects of deep space radiation on astronaut brains over time. Melody explained, it's why we haven't sent humans to Mars yet. The journey would expose them to radiation that causes serious neural damage. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. This wasn't the story they had come for, but it was a bigger one. Today we received promising research on neural protection technology that could solve this problem. Melody continued, careful not to look at Elon. This technology could make long-distance space travel safer for the human brain. Understanding dawned on some faces. The challenge had been a cover for something bigger. So the test was fake, someone called out from the back. The test was real. Felix stepped in, but it was never about a score. It was about bringing together the best minds to solve a problem that affects all of humanity's future in space. From his position at the side of the room, Elon watched with quiet approval. This was exactly the right approach. Focus on the problem and the solution, not on him or his performance. As the press conference continued, Melody outlined NASA's Z plans to incorporate neural protection technology into future missions, starting with tests on the International Space Station next year. This is the beginning of a new chapter in human space exploration. She concluded one where we can travel farther safer. With our minds intact, the questions that followed were more thoughtful, more focused on the science, and less on the competition. The tone of the entire event had shifted as journalists began filing out, already rewriting their stories. With this new angle, Zara noticed a young girl in the back of the room. She was maybe 11 or 12, holding a notebook covered in equation and diag. While most people were leaving, she was working, her way forward, determined to reach the stage. Zara approached her. "Are you interested in brain science?" The girl nodded eagerly. "I want to be an astronaut, but I'm also good at puzzles, like really good." Zara smiled. "What's your name, Amara?" the girl said, clutching her notebook tightly. "I've been following your work on neural mapping. I have some ideas about it." Zara raised her eyebrows, surprised that someone so young would understand such complex science. "What kind of ideas?" Amara opened her notebook and showed Zara a series of drawings. They weren't childish doodles, they were sophisticated neural pathway maps, similar to what Zara's team had been working on, but with some interesting variations. "Where did you learn this?" Zara asked amazed. "I taught myself." Amara explained, "My mom works at the hospital. She brings home old medical journals and I read them." Zara looked up to see Melody approaching. "Dr. Chen, you should see this." Melody examined the girl's notebook, her eyes widening. "These are remarkable. Did you develop this neural protection concept yourself?" Amara nodded shilly. "It's not exactly protection, it's more like teaching the brain to repair itself." Melody and Zara exchanged glances. This was surprisingly similar to what Elon had described. "Would you like to come visit our lab sometime?" Melody offered. "I think NASA might need someone like you someday." Amara's face lit up with excitement. "Really? That would be amazing." As they talked with the young girl, Elon approached quietly. He glanced at Amara's notebook and gave a subtle nod of approval too. "Melody, the next generation." He murmured, "They'll go further than we can imagine." After the press conference, the NASA team gathered in Melody's office to process everything that had happened. The data drive Elon had given them was now connected to a secure computer, its contents being analyzed by their top researchers. Initial reports looked promising. Felix said, reading from his tablet, "The neural shielding technology is unlike anything we've developed. How long until we can test it?" Melody asked. 6 months for preliminary animal trials. Zara estimated maybe a year before human testing. Melody nodded, gazing out her window at the NASA campus. The storm had passed, and the late afternoon sun was breaking through the clouds, casting long shadows across the grounds. "I still can't believe he just gave us everything," Felix said, shaking his head. "Years of proprietary research, because it was never about competition." Melody replied, "For him or for us, it was about solving a problem that affects all of humanity." As they continued discussing next steps, Melody's phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "The girl with the notebook, keep an eye on her. Some brains are naturally resistant to radiation. Hers might be one." And Melody looked up sharply. How could Elon possibly know that about Amara from just a brief glance at her work? Then she remembered something he had said during their private conversation. Some brains are more resistant. Some even show positive adaptations. Was it possible that there was an even bigger discovery waiting to be made? That certain human brains might